Aquaman 2, also known as Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, is the 15th and last film in the DC Extended Universe before we all shift over to the new imaginatively titled DC Universe. Someone's going to have a hard time changing the sign outside HQ on that one. It's been a bumpy ride overall, passing through Zack Snyder's decently received Man of Steel, the disappointment that was Justice League, and the surprise successors of Wonder Woman and the first Aquaman. The latest film, apparently instigated by star Jason Momoa when he took out his quill and came up with the storyline, is apparently inspired by old films such as Flash Gordon and Jason and the Argonauts. While Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom isn't quite as wooden as the stop-motion skeletons in that last film, it's not exactly fluid viewing either. We rejoin Arthur Curry, played by Jason Momoa, and all of his chums a few years after the events of the first film. Arthur and Mera, Amber Heard, are married now and have a child. This baby, played by, well, a baby, brings all the complications and nappy-filled fun to Arthur's life that any baby would. Meanwhile, bad guy David Kane, played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen, is bearing a bit of a grudge against Arthur for accidentally killing his father and has been on a mission to find some old Atlantean artifacts to help get his revenge. When he comes across a mysterious black trident, read Sauron's One Ring, it promptly possesses him, promising him the power to defeat Aquaman. After Kane attacks Atlantis, Arthur learns that Kane and his buddies have been inadvertently, and bear with me here because this is where it gets a little silly, releasing greenhouse gases and raising the temperature of the planet. Understanding he'll need a little help to stop this, Aquaman reluctantly breaks his brother Orm, played by Patrick Wilson, free from prison. With relations still frosty between the two after Orm's shenanigans in the first film, can they somehow find a way to work together to save the planet, and what mysteries does the titular Lost Kingdom hold that might help them do it? I think it's fairly well accepted that DC has the more interesting superheroes out of DC and Marvel, but the less popular films. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, perhaps not Aquaman. Jason Momoa, though, does a lot of good work here to help the King of Atlantis punch above his weight. You can tell from watching interviews about this film that it's a bit of a passion project for him. And while Aquaman 2 can be a little run-of-the-mill at times, Momoa helps carry it with his sparkle-eyed likability. It's something the best action heroes have had since the beginning of cinema, and from minute one on the screen he's instantly likeable. It gives the film at least a fighting chance of investing its audience, even if Jason's never likely to win an Oscar. Patrick Wilson, too, an actor I've always liked since his turn as Lou Solverson in the brilliant second season of Fargo, does a decent job as Brother Orm, slowly letting his smouldering anger at the events of the first film go as he spends more time with his hyperactive brother. It's a thrift shop Hollywood buddy cop story crammed into the middle of the film, but in a way it embodies one of the movie's main themes, which is that sometimes we have to work with those we disagree with for the greater good. Unfortunately, apart from a few other small positives I'll mention as we go, that's about it for the good of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. The rest is your usual superhero fare, something so predictable it could rival an Antarctic weather report. Structurally, the movie takes far too long to get going. The simpler your story in terms of your hero's main obstacle, the quicker you need to get into the meat of it to stop your audience getting bored. Setup is important to make us care about characters, but Aquaman 2 has a few too many scenes of Arthur being a dad or having everyday chats with his underwater chums before the inevitable attack from the bad guy, and it drags a little because of that. There are the usual litany of cliched lines. I didn't note too many down this time, but a couple of favourites were, "We are this close to unlocking the greatest power in human history," and the almost nonsensical, "I didn't see it, I knew it." As I said in my Marvels video, we seem to be on the downhill side of all these superhero movies now, but if that does prove to be wrong, I hope scriptwriters try to be a little more creative with their dialogue in future. If you feel like you've heard a line you're writing before, scrap it. I've always appreciated DC's slightly more serious tone to Marvel's jokey one. Unfortunately, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom apes Marvel more, bouncing between comedy and drama as often as a ball bounces between halves in a game of Sunday League football. I guess the erratic nature makes sense when you think who these films are generally aimed at, but filmmakers have got to learn to pick their moments. If you make it hard to laugh at your silly stuff and hard to take your serious stuff seriously, your movie's in trouble. In terms of Aquaman 2's design, I'm a little torn. There are strong echoes of the Star Wars prequels here, and I'm a big fan of the look of those films. But then Aquaman will do something like throw in a weird shark submarine that looks like Bruce from Finding Nemo, and it all crumbles. The underwater CGI is decent. I think they came up with some new tech that made this easier to film for the actors, which is nice. and the film uses colour theory well to dazzle the eyes. Unfortunately, you're often seeing all this through the lens of a yo-yo cameraed CGI fight, so it's hard to take it in. My brain switches off now as soon as these protracted battles start, waiting for the real story to begin again. Plot-wise, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom generally makes sense. It relies a little too heavily on action to move characters around or put an obstacle in their way, which of course gets repetitive, but it's no worse than any other superhero film. There are a few strange plot inconsistencies. For example, a character locked away deep in the desert finds an entire ocean 5 minutes after breaking out, but do your best to overlook these things and you can get through it. A couple of positives, as promised. It's lovely to hear John Rhys-Davies again. That rumbling voice will be sadly missed when it's gone. The film does try to deal with a range of themes, such as the climate crisis and fatherhood, even if it's only surface deep. There's one great scene in the middle of the movie that reminded me of an Alfonso Cuarón one-take shot, and the film wanders over a variety of locations, which at least keeps things fresh during its 2-hour runtime. But overall, this is just another superhero film. It's not really very good in the grand scheme of cinema. It's not going to move you. It won't particularly excite you either, as we all know what's going to happen before we even enter the theatre. With Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the DC extended universe is coming to a close. Let's at least hope the new DC universe has some fresh ideas. Anyway, nothing more to say. This is Movie Maverick signing out.